For years, I've wanted nothing more than to use a weapon that grinds skulls into tiny pieces and shoots them at demons from hell. To ride a mecha dragon and take down demonic forces of evil. To command an Atlan mech and punch demons the size of skyscrapers in the face. And to rip the beating heart out of a mancubus and watch him explode before me. Luckily for me, you can do all of this in Doom the Dark Ages. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Hey boys, getting ready for war? You don't mind if I test my skull crusher on you? I can't kill your friendlies. Okay, that's a lot of enemies. And that is where Doom the Dark Ages is different from any Doom game that came before. The Dark Ages is a sequel to this Doom, the 2016 Doom, which was the reboot of the entire franchise. And Doom the Dark Ages is taking the franchise in a different direction in a number of ways. This is the first example of that. Large open spaces where you can see a lot of enemies and they're all coming at you at once ready to kill you. At times, this thing was overwhelming. Trying to survive while you're being attacked by many different types of demons was pure chaos. I also have a confession to make, which I am not ashamed to say. Doom the Dark Ages allows you to select from a number of different difficulties. I started playing on the second easiest difficulty, but after dying repeatedly over and over again, being unable to get past my arch nemesis, the Cyber Demon, this giant demon here who would just not relent, I had to put the game on the easiest difficulty. And I have no shame about that, because Doom the Dark Ages is genuinely one of the most fun video games I've played in recent times. Last week, Bethesda asked me to an event in Sydney where I got to play Doom the Dark Ages for a few hours behind the scenes before the game releases. And even though the game feels so much like Doom, it plays quite differently to the other Doom games that have come before. Yes, it's still fast-paced, action-packed. You still feel overwhelmed by demons at times. Still ridiculously brutal. You can still hear them shredding metal with the soundtrack, dropping some thick riffs. But playing as the Doomslayer, you feel so much more like a tank. And a huge part of that style of gameplay comes from the shield and parry system. In this prequel, the Doomslayer is now equipped with a shield saw, which you can not only use as a traditional shield and block incoming enemy attacks, but you can also use to deflect enemy attacks back at them. You can use to teleport and charge your way around the battleground. You can use to slam through certain doors and gates. And you can also throw and stun enemies for a short amount of time, allowing you to either take out other enemies or just get the beat on them. The parry system is also quite different in this game to other Dooms, seeing as though there's no real dodge button here. Instead, you have to parry and time enemy attacks. You get a certain parry window depending on which difficulty you play, and at times I felt like I was playing more of a first-person Souls-like game than a Doom game, which is definitely not a bad thing. Just be aware though, when moving into certain fights and battlegrounds, you have to be aware of which weapons you're using on which enemies. You have to be a bit more tactical with your movements and how you're going to actually take out the entire group. You can still play mindlessly, you can still kind of run and gun, but I like that they've added gameplay depth with the shield. There's a bit more thought to it than just trying to shoot shards of skulls at demons as they approach from the gates of hell. Now, what's hugely different in this game, and is apparently something the Doom developers have been wanting to do for quite a long time now, is the addition of the Mecha Dragon and also the Atlan mech. Let's talk first about the Mecha Dragon. This is essentially a dragon you can ride and fly around, and the game expands out into these giant open sections where you're flying between objectives. The part I played, you were flying to these giant capital ships, had to take out their turrets, and then can land your dragon in the capital ship, take it out from the inside on foot, destroy its core, and then jump back out onto your dragon and fly away. When I first started playing this, I was quite skeptical of the flying section, being like, hey, this is not really what I want in a Doom game. Is this really the Doom experience I've been hoping for? But then, once I got into the capital ship section, man, was this fun. And timing a parry also supercharges your weapons, allowing you to take out the turrets faster and form a strong bond with your Mecha dragon. Now, the other new section is the Atlan mech, where the Doomslayer gets in a giant mech suit and punches giant demons in the face. Not only can you walk around in this thing and feel like an absolute tank, more so than before, you can walk through bridges, just step on insignificant creatures, and then also get to use an automatic weapon and just tear down hell on hell. And usually when you get in a mech suit in a video game, it feels slow and kind of clunky and awkward to move, but this to me felt so fluid, like you feel like an absolute monster in that thing. Now, one thing I will say, this game doesn't have the takedowns that the first Doom game had. At least it doesn't have anywhere near as many of them. But to me, this was a bit disappointing, but I guess it also keeps gameplay rather fast and snappy, especially because you're moving around a little slower than you do in some of the other games. And you don't necessarily want to be pulled into a takedown animation every single time you kill one of the lower level enemies. I understand why I've made this decision, but at times I kind of missed it as well. Was hoping to, watch the Doomslayer absolutely rip the head off a demon. But that said, I felt like the game moved through a nice flow of larger sections, which is definitely newer to Doom, to the more traditional closed-in corridor kind of gameplay we're used to. There was enough variety in this to scratch both those kinds of itches, and after feeling the chaos of moving through a giant open section like this, it was nice to then get back to some of that traditional Doom gameplay, moving into the corridors, into the hallways, and even having to solve and unlock a few puzzles along the way. I also found it interesting how they're expanding out on the story and lore of the Doomslayer in this title. The game is really delving into the Doom lore of how the Doomslayer became the Doomslayer, and is so fueled and driven to stop anything that comes from hell with his Skull Crusher. There's also a good amount of variety in melee weapons. I got to use the Gauntlet and the Flail. The Gauntlet is like a mega fist, which he can use to punch and one-shot certain enemies, and then the Flail has a bit more range than this. And I believe there's also a mace, which you can unlock later on. The theme of the game also feels a bit more medieval and less futuristic in some ways. The weapons I used, for example, were the shotgun, the shredder, the twin barrel, and the pulverizer. The twin barrel was the only plasma kind of based weapon I got to use, which was much more effective at taking out certain enemies, especially the ones with the blue shields. But most of the time I found myself sticking to the skull crushing pulverizer. Does he like take the skulls off the enemies he's killed and then use them as ammo for the skull crusher? Is that how it works? Doomslayer, we might need to have a chat. Seems like you got some issues, bro. But seriously, ID Software have done such a cool job with this game. Huge thanks to Bethesda for asking me to come play the game, give me early access. The game launches on May 15th, and I guess I'll be seeing you all in hell. Subscribe and
stay bombastic.